Hey, what's up guys? You're watching Bobsdecline. And today we're going to be taking a look at how we can replace this guy, an old A-base analog meter, with one of these new digital socket type meters. Alright, so just before we get started here, everyone, this work is only to be performed by individuals that are not only trained, but also authorized to do so. My videos are to be used as guidelines only. Always adhere to all the work methods and standards according to the company and the jurisdiction that you work for. So here's the deal today. Now, I do want to give you guys a heads up. This is an old entrance. We're looking at an old church here. It's not drawing a whole lot of load, mostly just lights inside. The entrance, it looks to be in pretty good shape considering its age, but we do have to put one of these new digital meters on. So again, a heads up, once we get this guy opened up, it's probably going to look pretty nasty, probably be full of bugs and bees and all kinds of junk in there. The wire, everything's going to be pretty old. As long as there's no arcing or direct safety issues, we're going to move forward with the job. We're not going to force the customer to rebuild their entrance given the circumstances. All that being said, if I did show up here to, let's say, a partial power call, flickering lights, any issue whatsoever that the customer was having, pretty much the only option is for them to get an electrician and bring the entire entrance up to code. So the meter that we're going to be installing, it is a digital meter. It uses radio frequency to obtain a reading. It's not what most people call a smart meter. Now, I'm not going to get into meters a whole lot today. There's a ton of different types of meters between both single phase and three phase. But one thing I do want to mention, there are some meters that look quite similar to the socket type meter. I'll show you guys one here. So now this one does have a demand reset on it, so it stands out quite a bit. They don't all have that, but this meter is designed for an entrance that takes very little amperage. So you can see on this guy here, it says right off the bat 0.5 to 200 amps at 240 volts, and this guy says 0.2 to 20 amps. So you don't want to be putting that meter on just regular residential where all the load is going directly through your meter lugs. It could cause some pretty serious damage or even injuries. So typically these transformer rated meters, we call them, do have a warning label on them. Warning, transformer rated meter, check nameplate for information. If you're not familiar with exactly what to look for when doing meter work, just don't do it. Get the proper training first. A basic journeyman Lineman ticket doesn't always cover all the meter training. You can get into some pretty intricate stuff with PTs and CTs. So these RF meters can be read from a remote device as our meter readers driving down the street, whereas this one here, they've got to stop and actually read out the old analog reading. Actually, if you guys want to take a look at that reading, write down in the comments what you think the reading is. So you can get that right. I haven't looked at it yet to see if it's a real tricky one. It doesn't look too bad, actually. So what we call this meter, it's an A-base meter. And this is the source side. That's our load side. And the wires literally go right up into the meter and tighten down in some connections in there. So we're going to take a look at that in a minute. So there's no way to remove that meter without taking the entire device off. So we're going to put an adapter on it. We call it an A-base adapter. And once that's installed, we'll be able to take the new meter, simply pop the socket type on. This work can be done while everything's energized, providing there's not too much load. Ideally, if you are doing it energized, you want the customer's breaker to be open. A case like this, where there's probably no load being used whatsoever, we could easily do that one while everything's energized. If it is energized, you want to be wearing your 1 kV rubber gloves, of course. And we only have one customer. on this transformer behind me. So power's going to be out anyways while we have it off. We might as well open that transformer, make our life a little bit easier. And check out this view. Beautiful day out there, some pretty nice country. All right, so we got the power switched off. So now we're going to get out all of the tools and equipment we're going to be using. We'll take a quick look at that. So we've got our new meter. We've got a meter ring, which isn't currently on the older installation. A couple seals, our meter grease, screwdriver, and our adapter. So this is the main component in this change out, the A-base adapter. Basically that meter is going to plug onto there. Wires are still going to go up inside the bottom of this guy, the same as the older analog meter, which basically looks like this unit as a whole. So taking a closer look at our A-base adapter, you can see that it's good for 160 amps continuous, which is the standard for a 200 amp service. Now we've got cover on this guy, as some of the installations for this type of metering is actually inside people's homes. So this is mounted on the wall, and you'll have the conductors going directly into the meter socket. So for this particular installation, we're not going to be needing this cover at all. So this guy can get chucked into the garbage. And we might as well loosen off all of our screws here before we get started. Whenever I'm doing these swaps, I try to loosen off all the screws, get all the material out, get as much ready as I can to minimize the power interruption for the customer. I also did grab a voltmeter. It's pretty easy to tell that we've got the right transformer. We're out in the country, and there's just the one line of triplex going off to our transformer, which is now open. But at the same time, it's always a good habit to verify that whatever you're working on is isolated or dead. So we're going to approach this job much in the same way as how we see it energized. Now again, don't be surprised if there's a whole lot of junk in behind this meter. Alright, it doesn't look too bad actually. A few bugs, a few cobwebs, no wasps today, so that's always a plus. But first thing we'll do is check for voltage. So the source is the two leftmost lugs. So we're going to put our leads across the source side here. And we've got 0. If there was any backfeed, it would still go through the meter to those same two lugs. But we'll check them anyways. That would normally be 240, and then we'll check from one of our hots to ground. We've got our 0, and we've got our 0. So we're all good here. All right, so basically what we're looking at, just like a regular meter, this whole mess of neutrals and grounding and bonding, that was a code back in 1951. It bypasses the meter altogether, just like today's meters, or most of today's meters. Some meters require the neutral connection, but a standard 200 amp socket type residential meter, the neutral bypasses the meter, and the two hots go through. So this will be one leg, and this is the other on the source side. And on the right hand side, we have our two load side hots. So the ones that'll zero out, these two are the same hot. So if we put a voltmeter across that, will energize, we'll get our 0. And this guy goes in through one side of the meter and back out into this guy. It was set up that way so that if something ever happened where those two crossed while it was energized, essentially all you're doing, if that were to happen, is you'd be bypassing the meter. It wouldn't be you wouldn't have a 240 volt arc. What you want to do, basically, this whole unit has a screw holding it in place up here somewheres, and then also these copper, sometimes they're brass, little fingers that come down that tap into the screws. If you try to lift the meter off while those go up inside, you can end up fighting with it a little bit. You also have these tiny little ridges right up here, these guys here, that have to line up just perfect on the new adapter. So trying to line up those two ridges along with all your fingers, along with that screw in the back, it can get a little bit tricky. So what we would do normally, if this was energized, of course, with our rubber gloves, we'd go on the source side first, and you just want to back that screw off slightly, the two source sides. And down on the wire side. Now if you loosen those off just right, you should be able to tuck that finger up inside the unit with a little shove here. And the whole meter's actually coming off already, so she might be seized on there a little bit. Let's see if this one will go. As I was fooling around with that, the whole unit seems to be fairly loose, so it looks like it's gonna come apart quite easily for us. So let's just loosen all four of them off and see if the unit will come off as a whole here. Oh yeah, they come off real easy. There's the screw at the back. So if this setup were inside a house, it wouldn't have these little copper fingers at all. The wires would just go directly inside. But now, where it's an outdoor setup, basically what we're going to do is we're going to steal those copper fingers and put them into the adapter. Alright, so we get all the copper fingers out. There is a front and back. You'll see this side, the whole back is smooth. And the front side, there's a little notch right here. That's the front. That's so you can take your screwdriver, grab it by the front, and slide it up into the unit. So once this is energized, the finger is going to be sitting somewheres down here. Let's kind of line them all up there. But the issue is, if you try to install this adapter and line all these guys up with their slots, along with that tab I was talking about, along with the screw, it can get pretty tricky. So what we're going to do is we're going to slide them all up inside the unit and just snug them down just enough that they don't fall out of place. Now, one thing you've got to be really careful if you are doing this energized. Basically, if this is energized right now, these two guys would each be 120, 240 across. And as you're lowering this adapter down into place, ideally these brass fingers won't make contact with the live. However, they're going to be close enough. The last thing you want to do is have your thumb right there, because that's going to become energized as we drop that down into place. Look at that, she lined up first shot. So you do want to make sure that screw in behind is attached, so when that meter's pulled off, it's not going to put all the strain on these connectors. And as you can see, the connectors are all clear of the two live lugs and the load side, but our little tabs didn't quite line up. So a little bit of wiggling around, you can see now we get that in place pretty good. If those aren't lined up 100%, then that steel cover isn't going to line up with that very tiny screw hole. You won't be able to seal the unit again once you're done. If we were doing this live, like I said, we've got to keep in mind these two guys will be energized. You want to work on your load side first. If that meter, even if that meter's on, your load side two lugs won't be energized until you tighten these guys up. So why work on 4 of them hot when you can just do the 2? But pretty much all you got to do, loosen this guy off. It's going to drop down into place. You might have to shove it down in. Perfect. We've got that all the way down, and we're going to tighten him up. So that's pretty much it, guys. We've got the new socket type adapter in place, the A-base adapter. Now a regular meter is going to fit onto this particular setup. One thing I didn't mention, this socket is rated for 160 amps continuous. I shouldn't say all, 99.9% of our A-base installations we have in this province are only rated for 100 amp. You can see here, looks like number 2 copper, and maybe even number 4 copper there. So it's either a 60 amp or 100 amp main breaker inside. It's more than enough of what this can handle. Basically, if ever a customer is doing upgrades to their home, they're putting in a heat pump or a pool or building on an extension, we would never install an adapter for them. They would have to upgrade their entire entrance. These adapters certainly do have a time and a place. Chances are, if you're using them, it's a pretty old installation. So we've got our meter, and you've guys seen before, we've got our meter grease. I've been meaning to grab one of these at the office. This tube lasts me usually like 2 years because you put such a small amount on. And I can't remember the brand, what's under all my tape. I tape it up so I don't get red goo squirting out the sides there. But I've been meaning to look up the brand so I can let you guys know. So for our next step, we're going to install our meter. Sometimes they're pretty stiff to get on. Ideally, you don't want to be smacking them too hard. All right, so we're pretty well done. We just got to put that cover on. But before we do that, let's go energize that transformer again and check the voltage before we head out of here. All right, so we just closed in our transformer. So we're gonna do a quick voltage check here at the meter. Should have our 240 coming in across the 2 source leads. There we go, 246. And more importantly, if we check on the load side, we know all the connections going up through the meter are good. 247, and then we'll check our 120 from one of the hots down to the ground. 124, and our other side 123.2. Perfect. So let's get that lid on. So I do have about 50 of these work orders to do. I basically got a whole list of them on my computer. So when we find days like today where it's sunny, not a breath of wind out, as the wind's blowing across my speaker probably, I guess what I'm trying to say is it's not a very busy day. I do have quite a few work orders on the truck, none of which are an emergency. It's a good opportunity to catch up on some of these work orders. Now, as we put that cover on, I'm just going to get the teeth to bite down inside here. And up and right over top of the new meter adapter. Now you can see these screws are part of the lid, and there's not much play in them. That's why that bottom part has to line up 100% in order for those screws to grab. So let's see if we got lucky or not. And it's grabbing. Beautiful. All right, so now we got to seal her up and we're good to go. All right, so one last step before we leave is you want to get down all the meter information. That's for the customer's billing and usage, of course. So the new meter, we simply took a photo of the meter. We've got the serial number, the meter number, the reading, which is 0. We want to make sure we capture the old reading. This one isn't the best example. This one's going to be pretty easy to read, but we'll go over it real quick here. When you'll hear some of the old school linemen say you read from right to left. Now, if you read from right to left, let's say that's a 9, that doesn't mean you write down your reading starting off with a 9. It simply means if you look at the number to the furthest right, it'll help you figure out what number is to the left of it. So we'll just show you guys how that works out. Like this, we can start off here. That number is going to be a 5 for sure. But when we go to the far right of the screen, this looks like a 6 and this looks like a 9. But in order to verify that, we've got this extra little dial here, and it's showing the rotation is this way. So if the rotation is that way, this dial would be on a 1 right now. So if that's on a 1, we know this dial just crossed that 9. If this dial was all the way around here to the 9, this dial would actually be marked as an 8. So that just crossed the 0 into the 1. This guy here just crossed the 9. So the number on our far right is going to be 9. So now where we do have a 9, we know this guy can't be a 6. It didn't just cross over that 6 line. It's just about to cross. So that next number is going to be a 5. And moving to the left, the next one should be somewhere in the middle where we've got a 5. So 65 and 4. And that number's not supposed to be there. So we've got 5, 4, 6, 5, 9. That's our reading on this guy. We'll input that into the system. I gotta jump in the truck. These mosquitoes are insane right now. All right, guys, so that's how we convert an A-base meter setup to a socket type with an A-base adapter. Pretty straightforward. When I'm in town, I don't open the transformer and cause an outage for 6 or 8 customers. Pretty well do it live. Sometimes we can cut it at the mast, but a lot of times these older installations, the wires are so short and brittle, you don't want to disturb too much if you can help it. It is, and I'm repeating myself now, but I do want to emphasize the importance of, if ever there's any issues, this isn't a solution for a meter entrance that has problems of any kind. This is simply so that we can get a digital meter on at our request as a company onto the customer's owned equipment. If we arrive and the entrance is damaged, we're not going to touch it. We're not going to try to swap one of those meter sockets on. We'll get a hold of the customer, let them know something isn't safe, that they have to get it repaired. If it's in bad enough condition that it's an immediate fire hazard, once we come across that, then we'll have to disconnect it, unfortunately. So this one, lots of bugs and cobwebs in there, but all in all, it was in pretty good shape for, and I know some guys are going to hang me in the comment section for saying pretty good shape. It certainly would never be accepted as a new install. If this customer was disconnected and wanted power a few years later, they'd have to put a new entrance on. But as for a grandfathered in electrical entrance, definitely seen much worse. So we're going to wrap this up. I did want to mention, and I meant to mention this in my last video, generally when guys want to message me directly, instant message, direct message, whatever you want to call it, they hit me up on Instagram or Facebook, sometimes on email, and I just wanted to let everyone know I'm absolutely swamped with messages right now. I was able to keep up pretty good in the past, and I tried really to respond to each and every message, but I'm getting a little bit overwhelmed with direct messages. So I see there's messages in there from months ago even I'm not caught up on. So if you did send me a message or had any questions, be patient. Try my best to keep up, guys. I try to answer a few every night, but I appreciate, and don't ever be scared to send a message. I appreciate all the messages and comments very much. And as usual, thanks for stopping in, guys. Hopefully we'll see y'all soon. Things are getting quite busy with the summer coming in here. We got a long weekend. I'm going to try to get some work done on the house this weekend. I'll get this video edited and uploaded. Thanks for stopping in, guys. Don't forget to drop me a fist bump. Let me know where you're watching from, and we'll see you next time.